Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our second live webinar of today. Alex here from the Festival of Enterprise. Again, I am talking today how to get the funds you need to spend your way out of the crisis. I am joined by Patrick Burge and Tony Ryan from Smorgasbord. So hope you're well, hope you're good. Thank you everybody for posting up. I can see we've got a bunch of people already. We've got Diana from Nottingham, we've got Harriet from Birmingham, Graham from Richmond, I'm assuming London, but it could be Yorkshire, I don't know. Simon from Burnham, we've got Southeast London from Miss, we've got Andy from Glossop, Mark, Jazz in a very hot and sunny Wolves. It's absolutely hot and sunny everywhere, I think. Certainly is down here in Poole in Dorset. And we are joined by, I think, Patrick, you're in Loughborough, Tony, you're in London. Is that right, chaps?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so as I say, we are coming live today. We are talking about how to get the funds you need to spend your way out of the crisis. And we're going to be covering the current status of each of the funding options available from the government, including updates. It's been a while since we've probably covered these. Latest stats on loans issued, etc. What to do if you fall between the cracks, because I know there's still a number of people, probably still in the millions, who are not eligible for these schemes, or you cannot raise enough from these schemes. And I look at the other options available. So how to spend your way out of this crisis, strategies for spending those funds that you've obtained, and what will the funding landscape look like after the lockdown restrictions are lifted. And they are gradually being lifted as we watch the news over the last days and weeks. So I will let Patrick and Tony introduce themselves from Smorgasbord, but it's an idea created by 4 businessmen who've each started and run companies, but believe strongly that a new or young business deserves a chance to grow, but rarely given the best help to enable that growth. So they've both spent decades in this landscape and are here to share their knowledge with you today. So kicking things off, I think we're going to Tony first.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. Hello, everybody. And I'm sure you'd much rather be outside in the sunshine than listening to this, but hopefully there's some useful information you can take away, and it will be less than an hour, so it won't be long before you're back out in the sunshine if you need to be there. So thanks, everyone, for joining in, and thanks to Festival of Enterprise and Bounce Back for allowing us the opportunity to speak today. We've had a small technical issue that neither Patrick or I seem to be able to work the slides. So we've got Alex has gratefully, thankfully agreed to be our glamorous assistant and to do the slide button pushing. So if you could move one on, Alex.
Certainly.
Okay, as Alex said, we've got 4 topics here. I'm going to cover the first 2. I know you've probably all been on lots of funding webinars, but it's really just to give you an update on where we are with each of them and what's happening and what to do if you aren't eligible for them. And then Patrick's going to talk about how you might spend that money wisely, and then we'll both look at the funding landscape. So next slide, please, Alex. I think it's just a holding slide. Yeah, so I'm going to look at how you get the funds you need. So next one, please. Okay, I mean, if you take one thing out of today, from me, it's this key points on cash for SMEs. As you're all aware, cash is what is going to keep the business afloat. So what I've said there is, I'm not going to read all the words out on the slide because it's being recorded, and we'll happily send you the slides anyway if you wish. I should have said at the outset, if you look at the front and back slides and a couple in the middle, Patrick's email and phone number on there, my email and phone number on there, and our website address is on there. We've got a contact form on there. So any questions that don't get answered today, please feel free to contact either of us. So as I said, the key thing is the numbers in your business, and it's really important that you don't panic. I've had lots of clients who got themselves into a bit of a state saying we can't get this, we can't get that. So do just try and keep calm. Work on what you can do and forget about all the other things. So Patrick's going to talk further about cash equals customers and customers equal cash. So he's going to cover that more than I do. But what we want to look at is what I've called the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. So what do we know? Well, we know how much cash we've got. We know what we're expecting to come in, and we want to see if we can accelerate that arrival process. What are we committed to spending? And we want to delay as much of that or cancel it if we can. And what government schemes can we take advantage of to obviously get more cash in? As we're going to cover later, if you can't get one of those government schemes, there are plenty of other options. Now, with the known unknowns, this is really very basic business planning. So if we take one of our popular phrases at the moment is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if we look at what's the best plan we can write, what's the middle plan we can write, and what's the worst plan. So if you look at the worst possible plan, it's still possible to say, well, what would we do if the worst happened? If there was a second wave of the pandemic, everything went back into lockdown, what lessons have we learned? What can we prudently estimate going forward? If we take the middle ground and say, well, let's assume that a certain amount of good things happen, and then let's look at the best possible cases that more and more lockdown elements get lifted and we're almost back to normal. And once you've done those three plans, certainly I've found, and a lot of research has been done about this subject, that once you've actually written something down and made a plan of what to do if it happens, you do tend to worry a lot less about that actually happening. It won't stop it from happening, but at least you know what you're going to do if it does happen. So a simple example, if you were to go to a hotel for the evening, for example, it would be prudent to go and check where the exits are, make sure there's fire alarms. What would you do if there was a fire? Now, you don't obviously think there's going to be one, but knowing what you do if there is one certainly can help you sleep a little easier. With the unknown unknowns, I'm just saying try and put them into some perspective, because we could sit and think of all sorts of scenarios and frighten ourselves to death, go crazy worrying about them. So just try and forget about them if we can. And the top tip, get those quick wins, try and get the cash in, try and stop cash going out, but then reforecast, refresh and review it again. So we've got hopefully another big milestone on the 4th of July when lots of things are going to be allowed to open. It's all still a bit unknown at the moment, but after a week or two of that, see what's happened to your business. How's it been affected? And then reforecast, refresh and review again. Next slide, please, Alex. So looking at the government options, this slide is deliberately meant to confuse you. It's I found it on one of the government websites, and it shows you all the options that are available and who they're available to, and that's probably enough to put anybody off. So we'll move swiftly on from that slide, please, Alex. So what is open to you in terms of the government funding options? Well, obviously we've got this, what they call the SIBLs and the BIBLs. That's the Business Interruption Loan Scheme and the Bounce Back Loan Scheme. We've got the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme, the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme or Furlough Scheme, which we're going to cover. And then just to mention there is the Innovative Small Business Fund, which includes the Future Fund, but I'm not going to cover that today because it covers such a small population of SMEs in this country. Most of them already have to be Innovate UK clients, or they have to have already raised 250,000 in investment cash from angels or other people. Don't forget, you can make a full refund of statutory sick pay up to 14 days. And some people say, well, it's only £95 something a week. But if you can claim 2 weeks of it and you've got several employees that have been off, it's all cash in your pocket from the government. And I'm going to cover in another part the Startup Loan Scheme, which is a government loan scheme that's been around for a while, but has come back to the fore during this crisis. So next one, please, Alex. Then looking at all the other funding options from the government, I'm not going to go into these. They're just there to remind you. You can get a business rates holiday for the whole year if you pay rates. There's a lot of protection now around those who are paying rent for your office space or your business space to stop landlords trying to evict you and issue winding up proceedings against you. HMRC have been very fair in trying to defer income tax and VAT. They've got an option called More Time to Pay. For corporation tax, they've actually set up a special helpline to deal with this. And then the other things on there, you've got the employment and support allowance. R&D tax credits is something I specialise in and we specialise in at Smorgasbord. Again, it's another free gift from the government. The average claim in the UK is £55,000, and this is a grant. It's not something you have to pay back. And then finally, there's things like asset finance, invoice finance, merchant cash advances, which I'll mention a bit later. Next slide. Don't forget, I know a lot of you, you are the business effectively, so your personal funding and your business funding are inextricably mixed. So don't forget you've got some personal funding options as well to help you. You can get relief from paying back loans and credit cards. So speak to your loan provider or your credit card company. They're being very, very helpful. Again, a lot of people's single biggest expenditure is their mortgage, and you can get payment holidays from them. If you're in rented accommodation, talk to your landlord about getting some sort of rent payment holidays. And then do look through your bank statement, every single penny that you're spending personally, as well as the business, and see what you can cancel or suspend. So things like gym memberships are the classics. So look at all the ways you can personally save money or save cash going out. Now, a lot of these are only deferring. You'll have to pay them eventually. But if it's a cash flow crisis we're trying to deal with, anything we can push back a bit further is going to help us get through this hump, as they call it. Next slide, please. Again, I won't dwell on all of these because you've probably seen lots about them already, but the business interruption loan is the larger amounts that people want to borrow over £50,000. It's available to all the major banks. There are now nearly 90 approved lenders. If you go to the British Business Bank website, you'll find a list of all those. Apply through your bank. Most of them are only taking application from existing customers, the high street banks. So deal with your usual contacts there. If you've got a business manager, if you're with one of the banks where you go through a call centre, you may end up waiting quite a while. This scheme and the bounce back loan scheme should be available to at least September, although the government has not put any dates on this scheme yet. But I've had lots of people ask me on webinars that I've done, when will the money run out? Well, we don't know, obviously, but the government promised 330 billion of guarantees, and so far they've only used up about 40 billion of that 330. So the key point with the Civils and the Bibbles loan is that although the government is guaranteeing the amounts, they're guaranteeing them to the lender, not to the person borrowing the money. So you are always liable for this loan, your business. They're not allowed to take personal guarantees for facilities below 250,000. And even if they do ask for security above that, they're not allowed to take your principal place of residence or your motor vehicle for some strange reason as a personal guarantee. There are no guarantee fees to pay for SMEs. And a quick update from yesterday, nearly 100,000 businesses have applied for this. Roughly half of them have received the loan, and they've actually lent out 10.53 billion. So see, roughly half of the people applying are getting it. And that doesn't mean they've all been rejected. Some of them will still be ongoing. We now move to the next slide, please, and look at the bounce back loan scheme. This has been the saviour for a lot of small businesses. It's for amounts up to £50,000, and it's calculated at 25% of your turnover. Now, the really good news for the small businesses is this is a really, really simple process. There's only 7 key questions. They don't ask for any documentation. They don't ask for any evidence. It's all what they call self-certified. Give you an example. I have an account with Starling Bank. They were approved a week after the scheme opened on the 11th of May. I went online at 10:30. I filled in the form. They'd even filled in a lot of it for me, things like my account number and company number, etc. And the money was in my account at 4:15 on the same day. So I think that's pretty impressive for them. So the really good news for the SMEs is not only is it easy to apply for and it arrives quite quickly, there's nothing to pay for whatsoever for the first 12 months. There's no interest and no capital repayments at all. Good news is the government's actually paying the interest for those first 12 months, but you are still liable for the capital, but it's all being deferred for a year. So, as I said, there's no business plans to fill in, forecasts, etc. If you've already claimed for a bounce back loan, you cannot claim for a, if you claim for a business interruption loan, you cannot also claim a bounce back loan, and vice versa. But there's 2 key points there. If you did get a loan under the business interruption scheme, which came out first, If it's up to 50,000, you can convert it to a bounce back loan because the terms are much, much better. If you've applied for a bounce back loan and received it, but then decide you might need a lot more than 50,000, there's nothing to stop you repaying that loan because there are no interest and no charges. So it's an interest-free loan, and apply for a business interruption loan if you need more than 50,000. Now we can see how popular this is. There was about 100,000 applied for the interruption loan, but nearly over 1 million have applied for this one. So you can see also that 921,000 odd businesses have been successful. So you're running at about nearly 90% success rate here, and they've advanced 28 billion of that money. So go for either of those if you can. You've got until September, so there's no need to rush. But I wouldn't delay it unnecessarily because I've said you don't need to make any repayments for the first 12 months. The rest of the loan will then be spread over 5 years. And my bank sent me a really nice schedule, a PDF document that showed for the next 6 years exactly what happens. Just for those you might be a bit worried, if you get a bounce back loan, you will see a payment coming out of your account, but then it will automatically come straight back in again. And that is effectively the government paying the interest element for the first year. So next slide, please, Alex. I'm not going to dwell on these two, just mention that they're there. The self-employed income support, I've got a couple of links on there for you. The first phase has been and gone. The second phase will happen next month. And they have cut it from 80% down to 70%. These are all based on figures that the revenue already has for you. And they do not pay out on annual profits above £50,000. So next slide, please. The furlough scheme or the job retention scheme. Again, unfortunately, you've missed the boat on this one. The last day to claim is the 30th of June, which you might say, well, that's not for another 6 days. But people have to have been on furlough for 3 weeks. So the actual deadline was the 10th of June. Now, the only exception to that is people who are on some form of parental leave. So whether that's paternity leave, maternity leave, or if you've had a child death, you're allowed some sort of grievance leave I wasn't aware of. But any of those people, when they come back to work, can still be furloughed, but everyone else has missed their chance if they're not in the scheme already. The other big change is that they will allow flexible furloughing, so your boss might pay if you work part-time, and the government will pay the rest. But again, those 2 links on screen explain all that for you. Next one, please, Alex. Okay, if your application has been rejected as opposed to you haven't qualified, then they will normally tell you why it's been rejected. So go back through all the application, see what it is they're not happy with, and see if you can resubmit your application. If it's one of the high street banks, they're pretty good, and if you've got a local business manager you can go and talk to. A lot of the branches have been open throughout lockdown, not all of them, but certainly the bigger ones. Go in and ask to talk to a business manager and see if you can sort it out with them. If not, there are a lot of alternative lenders, as I've said. If you don't want to go to the other high street banks, there are nearly 90 lenders in total. And there are plenty other types of finance that they can offer as opposed to just loans. They can offer what they call revolving credit agreements, which is like an overdraft facility. They can offer asset finance. So do go and talk to them. But one of the key things, it's not a selling point from our point of view. Please do get guidance from people if you want to do this. Being rejected might jeopardize your chances or stop the flow of money coming in. An interesting stat, we did some research with Grant Thornton into high growth companies a while ago. And interesting, what they defined as high growth companies, 48% of those people took advice about seeking funding, whereas with normally all the other SMEs, only about 2% do. So bear that in mind. If you don't want to speak to us, speak to any other form of expert who can help you. Most of them will give you some free advice to start with, so please do that. Next slide, please. If you don't qualify at all, there's some quite scary stats there, which I think are probably slightly underestimated, but a Treasury Select Committee looked into this recently. They know that over 1 million people have fallen through the cracks, as they call it. A lot of this is not through their own fault. It's unfortunate timing of a new job, or their employer choosing not to put them on furlough because it is their choice. And sometimes it's they're earning more than 50,000 profits. Things like rates relief grants. If your rates were over 51,000, you don't get any relief. So a lot of people just fall outside of these. So next slide, please, Alex. There's a plethora of things that you can do. And again, this one is just meant to do what it says, confuse you. A lot of people aren't sure what all these things mean. So if you move on again, Alex, I'm just aware I'm at the time. I need to give Patrick time to get to his bit. There's a slide here showing some of the different sources of business funding. Now, the really good news is that all of these have been around a long time. They have nothing to do with the coronavirus. So if you can't get one of the government schemes or you fall outside of them, there are all these other things you can look at. One I haven't mentioned, by the way, if you're in business premises, your local authority have now got discretionary grants. They can give up to 10,000 and up to 25,000. Each of them will have their own online application forms, and they all have slightly different criteria because it's called a discretionary grant. So there's all kinds of ways you can raise this money. You've got equity finance where you're parting with shares for the money, debt finance where you're obviously having to repay it at some point, and then other financing. These are normally things where you don't actually have to repay money as such. There's some form of grant or you're getting the money in exchange for a service. So next slide, please. One of the things that we specialise in is the Startup Loan Scheme. It's again a government-backed scheme that's run by the British, well, it's backed by the British Business Bank, and it's actually run by government departments through delivery partners using people such as Patrick and myself, and we've been doing this for several years. I've personally processed, I think, over 550 loans. So it's a great scheme that's been around a long time, but it's starting to come to the fore as people find they cannot get these other schemes that the government's introduced more recently. So it's any company that's been trading up to 24 months, and that's trading, not formed 24 months ago. You can borrow up to £25,000 per person, up to £100,000 per business, and it's fixed at 6% for up to 5 years. So next slide, please. Good news is there are no fees of any kind to pay, and we will help you through the whole process. As I've said, the details that are on the graphic are repeated there. But the good news is that you will get support right through this, and you'll even get 12 months mentoring and post-loan support. So it's a fantastic scheme. As I say, they've been going just over 5 years. I forget the numbers, but they've lent in excess of several billion now to several 100,000 companies. So just from my own point of view, I've actually got over 50 applications in progress at the moment. Normally I have about 6 or 7. So you can see how popular it's become. And the really good news is I thought being a government department, they may have actually been a bit conservative, but they've gone completely the other way. They're really trying to help companies, and every loan we're applying for, they're normally offering them either a 3 or a 6 month repayment holiday. So, the managing director said that if a business is successful before this problem, there's no reason why they shouldn't be successful afterwards, and they want to help them through that difficult period. If it's a brand new business, every crisis we've ever been through in my lifetime results in lots and lots of new businesses popping out. So they're very keen to help those as well. So next slide, please, Alex. Okay, just some tips and tricks there. I won't go through all of them, but do remember to cancel direct debits for VAT payments, or they will take the money. And you have to tell HMRC if you want to defer your payments with them. Do also note that the VAT deferment ends for those returns due at the 30th of June. You've actually got up to a year to pay them. But if your next VAT return is for the period in July, you will actually have to make the payment at the right time. Again, take advice from your accountant about lengthening or shortening your accounting year end. May sound an odd thing to do, but if you want to bring forward some grants and things, then shorten your accounting year end. If you want to put off some big bills, lengthen your accounting year end. Again, we specialise in R&D tax credit claims, as I've said. You can even get cash advances against these claims if you know that your claim is a good one. Again, if you could scroll up a little bit for me, please, Alex. Look at merchant cash advances for anyone that uses credit or debit card terminals. It's a really, really quick way to borrow small amounts of money without any credit checking. Look at invoice discounting or invoice financing if you've got clients with good reputations, whereby you take a small cut in what you've received from them from the finance company. Again, do look at regional grants and hardship grants. There's lots of them around. They're very particular to each industry or each region. And again, finally, do look at trying to incentivize customers to pay early in some way. So start taking debit and credit cards from now on, because it means you're getting them cash up front. Moving online with your sales if possible. So lots and lots of ways to hopefully bring more cash into the business. So sorry I was rushed through that a little bit, but now over to Patrick.
Cool. Thanks, Tony. Afternoon, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. A couple of apologies to start with, in addition to our technical problem. My dog is lying under my desk at the moment. It's a cockapoo. So if you hear some barking, that's her, and I can do nothing about that. Second apology is I tend to rattle through things, which I make no apologies for, really. You've got our details. I think Alex probably, or we will make the slides available to people as a Q&A. Next slide, please, Alex.
Sure. There's a couple of questions there, but I'm sure we can answer them at the end. Thank you for your questions. Any more questions, please pop them in the chat box as we go.
Cool. So I was a bit concerned about the title of this webinar, the word spend. And we're not here to sound flippant, or I'm certainly not in this part of the webinar. We're not here to sound flippant, but this is about taking action you can take, making a plan and following it. And as Tony talked about strategically what you can do with what he talked about, he talked very practically about things you can physically do immediately. We do a lot of work with startups, and we do a lot of work with more mature businesses, and marketing has become one of those terms that I think has become hijacked. And what I say to people is, forget about sales, forget about marketing, forget about any terminology. Just think about your customer really hard, and even more so at the moment than at any other time, because we're all going through really weird times, and we're all thinking unusually about things. And just imagine your customers are doing exactly the same. So yeah, next slide, please, Alex.
Sure.
This is so smooth. First thing I'd say to people, just think, contextualize where your business is. I'm not, there's probably lots of different business owners who do lots of different things on this webinar. And a lot of people are in different stages of their business. So you just take everything I say and put it in your own context. But I do think that not enough companies think about their competitors in the terms of where their customers' focus is. So a competitor, to me, isn't somebody that does the same thing as you do as a business. It is somebody or something that competes for the same pound, dollar, euro, whatever that you compete for. So if you start thinking really hard about what the customer is thinking, what problem you are solving for what types of customer, and think really hard about what conversation is right for your customer right now. So I do a lot of work in sport and fitness and in tech, and slightly counterintuitively, when lockdown started, lots of potential customers were very happy to talk about things, but they weren't happy to be closed on a deal for obvious reasons. They were going through the stuff that Tony's been talking about. They didn't know whether they were going to be here now. But actually, there's lots of people out there and lots of companies out there in, I use the term discovery mode. And there are conversations to be had, but you just need to be cognizant of what those customers are. So the message here is really, where are you, but focus on your customer, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what their problems are. The bad news about all this is you need a plan. But actually, really, the good news is you should be making a plan anyway in this part of your business as any other part. Next one, please, Alex. So what is the problem? Your customers have all sorts of different problems. You're all sorts of different businesses. But the woman on this slide has a problem that she could probably overcome because she's just pondering about the problem. The guy in the bottom corner has got, excuse my French, what we call, when we do workshops with people, we call it an oh shit problem, because it's a really big problem. And your job as business owners or marketing people or sales people or commercial people in growth is to find out what those big problems are, because they're the ones that need solving. Next, please. So beware of the experts. There are lots and lots of people out there who proclaim to be able to get you lots and lots of leads for your business. There are lots of experts in SEO, in LinkedIn, in sales, in email campaigns. But I liken all experts to the knee surgeon. So if you go to a knee surgeon and you've got a problem with your right earlobe, he is quite likely to say that's a knee problem, because that's where his focus is. So talk to experts, absolutely, but just beware of them. This is your business. Nobody knows your customers like you do. I do think there's a place for experts, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. Next slide, please. So as I said earlier, the good news and the bad news is you need a plan if you're going to spend or invest some money in getting customers. 90 days is probably good time span for a plan. And be assured, it really doesn't matter what it looks like, doesn't matter what it's written on. It's your plan. It's nobody else's. But the key things are that a plan, it is written down, and it's a bit like public proclamation. Again, as Tony intimated, if you write the plan down and it's timed, it's communicated to other people in your business and even communicated to your customers or other stakeholders. It has both words and numbers. And if you don't write it down and do those things, how can you know what you were thinking at the time, where you were going, and how can you change it? But the key to me is you're going to have a hypothesis about how you're going to spend some money to create some revenue from your customers to turn it into cash. So you'll have a hypothesis which comes from your gut. Then you need to go out and ask around, make sure you're not missing any tricks as far as you know. And there may be all those known and unknowns out there, but ultimately it's your own decisions. Go with your gut. It's got to be decided by you, and trust your own judgment. But there are steps you can take to not completely ensure that you're going in the right direction, but actually help you get there. Next slide, please. Classic pitfalls. The first two are obvious. Thinking, marketing, sales, outreach, whatever we want to call it these days. Thinking it's free and thinking it's easy. Generally speaking, free and easy stuff is exactly that. Free and easy may not get results. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But equally, you shouldn't think it's too difficult either. Pitfall 3 is, for me, don't think about the method you're going to use. But the most important thing is pitfall 4. The pitfall is not executing. Be persistent, be consistent, follow it through, adapt and adopt and change it as you go along the way. Next one, please. So this is an exercise that I do and we do with customers, and it's all about looking at your current customers that are active and your lapsed customers, and deciding what you're going to do to them and when you're going to do it. So I call it a customer white space. So it's a very simple exercise that we do all the time, not to be overthought. In fact, I'm onboarding a client later today, and basically I say to people, list your customers, the ones you've got, the ones you used to have. Think about what your relationship is with them now. You give them a star rating. You think about what the relationship might be in the future, and then you decide whether you're going to manage that customer up in your business, which means you're going to do more business or higher value business with them, whether you're going to manage them out of your business. I can feel the shock that people are thinking, I'm going to try and get rid of customers. Absolutely, you may want to get rid of some customers, because if that, quite often they may be costing you money without you realizing it, because of the time, effort, and energy that you spend on them. And then the third category is the one I hate most, which is maintain. I don't like to see any customers being maintained, because if you're just maintaining, you're treading water. And this exercise that I do with people isn't to be overthought. And I ask people just to put one line of the reason that they've come to that conclusion. Then you can decide what you're going to do with those customers. So a customer may just be difficult to deal with. He may not pay you on time. You know, we've quoted 27 times and got one job from Bill, and he hates us. That's about the reason for getting rid of a customer in my book. It may or not be the reason you get rid of them, but what you might do is increase your prices to a state where either it's worth doing the business with them, or they go anyway. It's hard, it's harsh, and it's a bit scary at times, but it's a really good exercise to do. Next slide, please, Alex. So we've done the pitfalls, and here's the don't list. So don't forget low-hanging fruit. Your current customers, Pareto rule, 80-20. Your current customers are the people you've probably... That's even better than my cockapoo.
Wow, yeah.
Was that the gong to tell me to shut up?
No, that was my NHS volunteer alarm.
Right.
Nothing can stop it.
The don't list. Don't forget the low-hanging fruit. Current customers, absolutely the easiest people to have a conversation with of whatever type. Talk to them about stuff. Sell them stuff. 2, don't reinvent the wheel. If it's working, ignore everything I said and carry on doing it. If it's working, absolutely. But do build a plan around doing it. Number 3 is a bit like number 2. Don't overcomplicate it. For Lord's sake, you know, this stuff is doable by most people. And yes, you can do a lot of this stuff yourself. You may need some help, but actually a lot of this stuff is doable in a lot of businesses. But the most important thing is don't stop executing. Be consistent, be persistent. It's the same as anything else in your business. If you don't keep doing it, it just doesn't get done. Next one, please, Alex. So this slide is sort of taken from some work that I've done a lot of with tech startups, but it works for any business. Dividing your business down into different revenue streams, products or services you sell, however you want to divide it or categorize it, you should really be able to identify the customer, what problem they've got, what our solution does, and why the customer would need it. And that's called they commonly now call it a value proposition, but it is just writing down for each of your revenue streams what you do, why you do it, and why they talk to you and buy from you. And then you can start communicating it. And we also go a little bit deeper sometimes and just state why we believe and how the customer wants to be communicated to. And most importantly, and I do apologize because I hate acronyms, and I realize I put one in here without explaining it. So deciding what the DMU, which stands for decision-making unit, consists of within that customer. So a little bit of an anecdote from when I first started work. I was selling print, and it was in the days when if you printed invoices out, which not many people do these days, but you had a computer and a printer, and you had a thing called computer stationery that came out of the back of a printer. Some of you may be old enough to remember it. Had sprockets on the side, and my job was to go and design and sell the printed invoices, remittance advices, and so on. So my job was to go and park on an industrial estate, knock on all the doors, get past the gatekeeper, the receptionist, try and get her or him out of the way, normally a her, I have to say, so I could get to the guy with the wallet, the guy that's going to give me the order. So normally you end up with a compliment slip with the guy's name on it. You ring him the next day, you try and get an appointment, and eventually what you do is you get past the gatekeeper, you get to the guy who's going to give you the order. He's just about, you sell to him, he's just about to give you the order, and then he goes, hang on a sec, before I place this order with you, I'm just going to go and speak to Jane, who's the woman on reception. So Jane's the woman who now dislikes me because I spent quite a lot of time trying to get past her as the gatekeeper. And the guy with the purse strings goes to Jane and goes, should we give this guy Patrick an order? And she goes, no, we're very happy with the people we use at the moment. But actually what she's saying is, he was really horrible to me. He just wanted me out of the way to get to the purse strings. So understand inside your customers, who are the decision makers, who influence the purchase. There's different roles. And these days, again, it's a new term. They call it account-based marketing. But actually, it's just good old common sense. Different messages to different people within the business you're selling to. And then you can write down why we believe people will buy from us if we provide certain things. And then you list the certain things you're going to provide to them. And then we can do our marketing. Next slide, please. So that's creating customer profiles is important. So who are your customers? How do they act? How do they speak? What's their language? What's their dialect? I mean, in business terms, their dialect. Create the value propositions. Then you can create scripts, which can work on LinkedIn, on your website, wherever they're going to be, whatever communication you're going to use to get to talk to the customer. And now is the time you can speak to experts because you've done the groundwork. You don't know how you're going to do this probably, what method you're going to use, but you know who your customer is, what their problem is, why they might speak to you, and then you can go and speak to experts. Next slide, please. Very conscious of the time now. So, so this is the process that we follow. You focus, which is what I've been talking about. Who are you focusing on? You generate leads. You nurture them. I call it the ABC. So, back in the day, ABC used to stand for always be closing if you're a salesperson. Then in the noughties and 2010s, it was always be contacting, and now it's always be contributing, because your customers will mostly check you out quite a lot before you ever speak to them. The numbers across business to business, and it varies of course, but the numbers are roughly speaking that your customer will have some experience of you on 8 occasions probably before they speak to you. So they've possibly got to 80% of their decision making before you even know about them. Whereas when I started selling many years ago, they may not even heard of you when you sat down to try and take an order from them. And finally, make sure your plan's repeatable. Adopt it first, adapt it, refine and change it. The most important things. Just try. Next slide, please.